Hello, friend. Today I'm going to share a sad but funny podcast.
And I'm going to share the magic of canned foods. Let's get to it.
My cool sheet is a podcast. And it turns out, Brian has talked about this as a cool sheet before, but I didn't know that. So, hey, we got a double up here, and that's okay because this is a really good podcast, and I have found it to be really helpful for myself. This is hosted by Carrie Lloyd. She is a British actor, a comedian, and a writer. And she came up with this idea of starting the show when she realized that a lot of her comedian friends were doing podcasts, and it happened to coincide with her beginning to talk about her dad publicly. He had passed away from cancer when she was 15, and she had kept it hidden. But once she started this podcast and she started talking about it openly, she found that there were a lot of people who wanted to talk about this with her and talk about their experiences. So the podcast then became a place where she could have these conversations she wanted to have, and she found it to be powerful for other people as well. Griefcast is now multiple award-winning podcast. It's released weekly, and it recently, like us, celebrated its 5-year anniversary, and she has recently launched its 8th season. In the beginning, it was Lloyd talking to her comedian friends in the UK, but eventually expanded. So now it has this broad range of guests. It has actors, writers, producers, and the conversations have also expanded to include more specific types of grief, not just grief in general. And her goal right from the beginning, I love this was for it to be a podcast when it was over, you didn't feel worse. And I can say personally that she succeeded with that. And one thing also she said that resonated with me is that we're all in this club, no one asked to join. And it's really helpful when you realize that there are other people in this club. So someone told me about this podcast when my dear beloved Griffin passed away. And I have found it to be helpful not just to help deal with death of a pet, but I've been listening to it a lot about losing other people in your life. So highly recommend Griefcast.
Yes, well, obviously I agree
yes.
a lot with this one firsthand because I did talk about it. This podcast has really got me through some tough times. Mm-hmm. It's so beautiful, and she's just, she has this really kind of soft and sweet voice. It's like a friend that, you know, immediately you feel like this is a friend of yours. And that feeling that you're not alone, that this is an experience that a lot of people deal with and how grief is different in every way too. That's what I really like, is it talks about how people process it in different ways because, once you find one of the interviews or the podcast that is dealing with it the same way that you are, it's magical and it really helps.
Yes.
And she'll talk about that because she's done this for so long now. She kind of, says, oh, are you doing this or is this happening? And they're like, no, but I'm more like this. And then she's like, oh yeah, I've heard about that. That's not how I dealt with grief. But, and it's just so beautiful. I will say the only thing, if you're listening, my friend, it's almost so quiet, like her voice is so soft that if I didn't have my noise canceling headphones, I couldn't hear it when I was commuting to work, actually, because traffic noise and stuff was too loud. So there was many times where I really wanted to listen and I needed it, and that's where I do it on my bike and commute a lot, and I couldn't hear it. But it did get me through when I lost one of my close friends very suddenly. It was something that I turned to, and it's made a big difference. And it's always there when you need it. Yeah. So it's really cool. Such a good one.
She does. I didn't notice that about the voice, but maybe because I have just been always at home alone when I'm listening or something. But anyway.
It was kind of disappointing because I was oh, this is a good episode. I got to get to work. I take off and I'm like, I can't hear it anymore.
Yes.
It was max up, and I'm like, oh no. But it's probably good to be having a moment anyway and listening to it.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Quieter environment.
Griefcast.
But so good. Yeah, cool. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, I'm going to be talking about this video. This video is called How Does Canned Food Last So Long? It's by BBC Earth Lab. And I've always wondered how in the heck you can keep something fresh in a can for a year or longer, sometimes multiple years, 2 years, 3. There's probably some things in there in my cupboard way too long, way longer than that, but I bet you if I open it, it's good. Now, I knew it had something to do with oxygen because that is a big thing, but I was like, there has to be more to this. Is there preservatives? Is it like some kind of science I don't know about? Just magic? Is it some kind of magic spell that people do? But this video answered a lot of my questions, probably all of them. And so they go into just one Heinz warehouse in the UK that ships 5 million cans every single day. That alone is worth watching the video. It is mind-blowing watching these things on the conveyor belt just zipping through. It's crazy. It's just blur of action. It's pretty much all mechanical, but there are a lot of people that work there. In fact, they have a resident biologist, which was super cool. She talks about how they super steam every can. So when the beans this particular warehouse was just beans. The beans were sealed, and it gets the can up to 248 degrees Fahrenheit, 120 Celsius, and it cooks all the beans, and it also kills off all the bacteria. They have 3 different steam cookers, and then they run them through these 2 special cooling machines that doesn't cause damage to the cans, but they double check, but it does kill all the bacteria. And they double check this by they rig this little probe into one of the cans, so it's full of beans and everything, and this will take temperature and mark the time, and if it's good for 3 minutes consistently, then they know that all the bacteria is gone and it is totally safe for eating, and that is the magic behind how canned foods last so long.
I had no idea. And you know what I'm thinking? I'm wondering, I want to see, I got to watch this.
Yeah, it's
I'm
so
like,
cool.
Well,
it's a short video too.
Oh, that's nice.
It's nice. It's just pretty succinct.
Yeah, but I'm just wondering, you heat it up and then it could expand, and if you cool it down, like, is it going to go do that thing that they do, you know?
Exactly.
And,
and that's why I think they talked about, they just kind of called them special machines that doesn't damage the can. They didn't get into that part of it. That could be a whole nother 8-minute video or something just about that technology of how they heat it up to get just the right temperature. And they showed the graph. It was super cool how it was higher than the minimum, which that 238 or 236, 120 Celsius, is like the minimum it needs to be. And it gets just a little bit higher though, because it can't go way higher or it's gonna, ruin the food or the can, and then it cools them down gradually in these 2 different coolers where it still keeps the can 100% intact, and then they label it and do all those other things. It was really fascinating. Yeah.
But that totally makes sense. So getting it up to 120 degrees and keeping it, that's how, like boiling water, has to be for a certain amount of time and above a certain temperature and all of that.
Yeah.
And so that totally makes sense. I just had no idea they did it that way.
Yeah, it just seemed, I knew there was something about it. And then, because I was, how can I keep this in my cupboard for 5 years? Let's just say a little bit longer than the 1 or 2 recommended. But it's totally fine. But then, but then it lasts like a week, even in the fridge once you open it. But it's not just the oxygen, that's a big part of it, but it's also the bacteria that can grow. It's all those other things. So it totally makes sense. But I needed to see it, and I'm glad I did.
Yes.
It's just a fun video too. Of course, you've got British accents.
Oh yeah, and it's
just doing
BBC.
Fun things, and these really like the machines are just. It's so cool.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
And if you want to watch the video or anything else that we've talked about, you can go to 10bestest.com/body. Thank you for joining us, friend. I'm Karen McFarland Holman.
And I'm Brian Hart.
Let us know in the comments. Have you ever found yourself at the intersection of joy and grief?
And let us know, do you eat canned vegetables?
If you're enjoying the show, please give us a like and share it with a friend.
Stay tuned tomorrow for another great show.
And don't forget to stay curious.